So, I mean, the inspiration for giving this talk was that myself and Mary and Darren and others have enjoyed flying cross country out of Hollister said, well, let's push it more this year. Really organize the Hollister League again, and even beyond that, some events like this to try to help people out who are thinking about flying cross country in the sort of Hollister to Avenal type area. So there are a vast number of topics we can talk about that would be helpful to people, but I don't want to, this is not a talk about the details of weather forecasting. This is not a talk about how to thermal, or just general cross-country tactics. There's other like talks on that you can get, or slideshows of things you get access to. Really the purpose here is trying to get people a little bit up to speed on the geography of the area, the airstrips, the routes, the preparation you need to do. So if you've never flown cross-country on this route and you're trying to learn about it, the purpose here is to give you sort of that beginning introduction and also tell you the things you need to do in terms of homework to really get yourselves ready to make the most use out of the opportunities here. And just for a little bit of background, I got my glider rating at Hollister in 1998, started training in 97, and at that time, cross-country flying out of Hollister was rare. And yeah, Romney was just about to appear, and the Dr. Jack predictions were just about to appear. Both of those sort of came at the same time. And in the distant past, people had launched out of even Fremont and gone down the Diablo Range on a good day. And so there was this sort of knowledge in the background. But, you know, there would be a day on the spring when Russell Holtz and Charlie Hayes would fly a couple of ASK-21s down basically to Avenal and back. And all of the others of us that flew out of Hollister, that's incredible. How did that ever happen? But what we quickly learned was that it's a great place to fly, and that especially in the spring season and a little bit in the fall season, there's, you know, probably 80% of the, or 3/4 of the days, even something like that, you can launch out of Hollister and do at least a 300K flight. And that there are sometimes in the spring or the fall spectacular days in which you get that first thermal to 8,000 feet and the second thermal to 10,000 feet, and then you hardly need to circle at all for the next 3 hours. And those days do happen. I'm not going to guarantee that it can happen for you. Always somebody else who shows up on the right day, having some flexibility. So the way I've organized this is I've got some things I can display here. This is, you know, a sectional map on CU. By the way, of those of you who are thinking of cross-country flying, do you all have CU on your computer? If you don't, get it. It's all worth it. It's just great for the ability to, you know, you record your flight on anything from a very fancy IGC official flight recorder down to, you can get IGC files recorded on your phone now, basically, and download that, and you can display it here. You can view other people's flights that you look up on OLC. I just grabbed a flight trace, one of Romney's flights, April of 2013, that launched from Hollister, turned around at what's called Black Mountain. I'm just going to use the cursor on the screen here to do it. Turned around down here, just outside of Avenal, and came back to Hollister, and actually floated quite a bit north and came back in. And it's not a totally typical day, but I'll talk about the details of that, but for the most part. So all these little blue things is I downloaded a copy of the turn point file. It's available for the Hollister area. And you can get that online. The reference for it is in this sheet. This may not be it. Actually, I looked. This is the version of the turn point file I have on my computer. It may not be the very latest, but it's close enough for the purposes of this.
Okay, we'll talk about it.
The other resources I've got on my computer that I can pull up here and show you are, I tried to use Google Earth to sort of do a flyover, and it's weird, when I tested it out, you know, I don't have an internet connection here, so I had to sort of record the Google Earth detail, and it gave very good detail for some of the terrain and terrible detail for others. but we may be able to make use of that. As Quest mentioned, one of the other things that was really essential to making this type of flying, making this route possible, is the access to the Pinoche airstrip, which is located right. Stop using this one, it's useless. There's the Pinoche airstrip. There's Hollister. It's about 30 nautical miles. It's just in a very key location, and the ability to land there and get aerotows out of there just makes it so much easier mentally to launch and go off and do this stuff, because it may be extremely painful to pay for an aerotow back from there, but many people think that that's easier than landing in a farmer's field and trying to get somebody to bring a trailer down.
I just want to bring something up about this turn point file, and that is it's not protected, okay? Anybody who accesses it can drag a turn point off into nowhere land. And I've actually gone on this thing and uploaded turn points and found EL3 or EL4 out in the middle arena somewhere. And so you need to verify this file before you use it as the Bible. I don't know what the best way of doing that is, but maybe the best way is we protect the file so nobody.
Well, Rami's the person who manages this file, so bring that up with him. Okay. So, you know, what I'm going to talk about here is, I mentioned this, Pinoche. I referenced back in these materials, you can get this guide to flying Pinoche. It was done by one of the instructors some years ago for when we check out people, you know, relatively new pilots for having done cross-country themselves before, and qualify them to fly down to Pinoche and fly the area and come back. And so there's a lot of useful information in there.
Where's that at?
And it's referenced in towards the back of the handout.
That is the BASA.
It's actually on the old Hollister Gliding Club website, but as I said, it's in the handout has a reference point.
We'll put it up on the BASA.
We can put it up on the back of the point.
I think I'll also put up on the Pasco website where we're advertising Hollister this year. So have it all in one place.
So, the other thing I've got here is just a couple of aerial photos of the Hollister Airport, for those who haven't necessarily operated very much out of Hollister Airport. So I'll just start very briefly with that, is here you're looking down on, this is runway 24 to the west, runway 31 to the north. Those are the runways that we use the vast majority of the time. This is the apron area here. This is a close-up. And look at that, there's gliders tied down, and glider trailers. And in normal operations at Hollister, especially in the mornings, usually the power traffic is using 3-1, and we get 2-4 to ourselves, and we do our glider launches off of 2-4. And the normal procedure is take a golf cart, you can assemble gliders in this area, you drag the glider out to here, maybe backtrack a little bit, but behind a Pawnee, that's usually far enough to launch. If you've got water ballast, you might want to launch off of 3-1. When we do the Hollister League, if we really get the turnout we're thinking of, we could have over 15 gliders on any given day, and that's going to be a swarm of gliders here. But
Harry, can I interrupt you for a second?
yes.
They're holding, you know, the Hollister Air Show again this year, Father's Day weekend in June, but they're probably going to send out a notice to clear the ramp about the middle of May. So for the last half of May, or whenever the date is, everything's going to be off the ramp. I don't know whether we'll be able to operate there or set up on there, but everything's probably going to have to be moved to the north side.
Well, that's a real problem, because obviously if, you know, currently we're talking about doing the Hollister League from the last weekend of April until Memorial Day weekend. The Memorial Day weekend will operate out of Pinoche. So if they've kicked all the glider trailers off the ramp at Hollister for Memorial Day weekend, that's really not a problem. If they have kicked them off the ramp for the weekend before, that's a real dilemma. I don't know.
I mean, we can work with the airport office, we can work with Gavilan, but I was really surprised to see how far in advance they're clearing the ramp this year, just as a heads up for you.
Okay.
So I wasn't really worried
But
about
back to this subject. So I'm going to talk more to Bill Bush and Jonathan and people about how we're going to arrange things, but you'll probably be assembling gliders in this area and bunching some gliders here, and usually these, on weekend, you can usually line some gliders over here, and then one at a time, we'll probably drag the gliders out when the towbands show up. There's other possibilities, yes.
I have one thing that I would like to ask. I know some people like to
Park their trailers.
park their trailers, yes, where Harry is indicating there. And we're gonna ask that people not park anything there because we're gonna line all the gliders up in that area.
And there's gonna be wings extending out
Yeah.
here and stuff like that. Yes, we're not gonna allow people to assemble their gliders in this area on these Hollister because it's just not gonna work. So anyway, that's just a little bit of interest. I'm gonna try to probably write up, once we determine exactly the procedures we use, I'll write up a sheet and make that available on the launch procedures. So, back to,
So can we leave the gliders assembled during the whole couple of weeks now, or?
You can if you want. You might have to find a spot for them, but certainly people do.
yeah. If you leave your trailer there, you're gonna have to pay a fee to the FBO. If you leave your glider assembled, you're gonna have to pay a fee to the FBO. And they like to charge separate fees for assembled gliders and trailers. So if you do both. So most private pilots leave their glider in the trailer and they'll assemble it on Saturday morning. And if they're gonna fly both days, they'll do it overnight on Saturday night.
It's $5 a day for each trailer and assembled glider.
Are there plenty of tie-down areas? Do we get our own stakes or anything? Like we make tables tie-down?
There are a lot of, it's an old military ramp with the indents in the concrete with tie-down places. They're actually spaced pretty well for a 15-meter glider.
Yeah.
For wingtips, yeah. They're spaced quite well.
But I don't think there are cables.
There's no cables.
You
No.
can bring your own
Set places
side
attached to
doors,
rope.
Yeah, but there are places that have to look, yeah.
And, you know, we might be able to, for people that do have stakes, it might make sense to put them on the north side of
In the grass.
Q4 in the grass. So, certainly.
Yeah, they're making room to put some gliders here. We have to work that all that procedure. Anyway, let's focus on the particular subject here. So, in terms of the knowledge I want to go over here, one is just the essential airstrips that you need to know about, know which ones are usable, know a little bit about their characteristics. And then I'm also going to talk about the essential landmarks you need to know about, as both places to find lift and just places where you're flying in this swarm of 15 gliders. There's a bunch of people on the radio saying, there's incredible lift 2 miles northeast of EL2. And you go, what the hell are they talking about? So, you've got to know those landmarks ahead of time. And I've listed the ones that I think are most important in here. So on the airstrips, let's just talk a little bit about the airstrips. On your way out of Hollister, you're typically going to get, some days it's so good that we could just do a semi-local tow up to what we call the East Ridge here and get lift and bump your way south to the Pinoche area. There's the Pinoche airstrip in here and head on down. The more normal thing to do is people take a high, expensive tow, heading towards this area, and you go about 15 nautical miles and climb to about 6,200 feet or so. And let's see, Bickle is there, so you're right about here when you release, somewhere in this region, and you glide along to this ridge here and get your first lift. And so, by the time once you've released, you may still have Hollister and glide, but not for long. You're really committed to Pinoche. I mean, that's the essence of cross-country flying all the time. And that was the transition mentally I had to make when I started stop flying the local area. Is I'm not flying local to Hollister anymore, I'm flying local to Pinoche. And once I make that commitment, that's where I'm going. So, the first airstrip that's really essential on the typical route is the Pinoche airstrip. Then as you go south down the route, the next area of really essential airstrips is near the Hernandez Reservoir. And then south of that, no, Bickle is way back. I'll come back. Talk about it. So there's one here that's called, they're referred to alternatively as Hernandez or Hernandez South is one of these airstrips. The other one that some people call Hernandez North is called Rocky's Airstrip. It was owned by, probably still is owned by a pilot named Rocky Hill?
Rocky Hill.
Okay, it's not Rocky Raccoon. And these are airstrips that, well, I'll just go back a little bit. So the Pinoch airstrip, you can arrow tow out. Land there, you get a tow plane will come and get you. These airstrips, no arrow tows. They're, may or may not have been used by power planes in years. The Hernandez one is pretty faint and hard to see if you haven't seen it before. The Rockies one, you can recognize it. Occasionally it has large livestock wandering around. And you think, well, why are these essential airstrips? And they are just because this is also the area that often has the strongest lift. And so what you're typically doing is, you know, well, I'm gonna go back to the route. I just wanted to go down the airstrip list here real quick. Other really important airstrips is New Coalinga, great big public airport, enormous paved runway, easy to operate, easy to see, far from civilization. And Avenal, big dirt field, glider port, town's right there. So that's my list of the most critical ones. You know, Pinoch, the Rocky, Hernandez North, and Hernandez South, New Coalinga, and Avenal. And most of the time that I fly this route, that's the sequence of a lot of airstrips that is my out at any given point. Something a little bit. There.
The Rocky, how big are those airstrips? I mean, the other, those are the quite question, Hernandez North and South, there's not somebody landed there.
Well,
I've landed at Hernandez South,
Yeah.
and it's in great shape.
Okay.
There's a road that goes right through it, so there's, you know, it's kind of a, you divide it into thirds. The middle section is good. At the time Quest owned the business, or Drew owned the business, no one would arrow tow out of there. I think you could arrow tow out of there, whether or not someone's willing to do it.
How much would it cost?
Well, I don't know those things. Now, it's been a number of years since I've been there, so I don't know what shape it's in now. But at the time, if somebody was willing to come and get me, I would have arrow towed out of there, no problem.
I got a very close look at Hernandez at the end of last season, and it looked really good.
But sometimes there are other activities at Hernandez, right? Sometimes they have events there?
No,
I've never seen
no, not at Hernandez,
No?
no.
this is the one that's on reclamation property, right? Just.
No, these are
No.
both on private land.
They both are.
Both on private land. One is sort of southeast of the reservoir, and one of them is northeast or due east of the reservoir.
Easy trader access?
We used to have the combination to get in there, but we don't anymore.
Yep.
But there's enough houses around there that we should be able to hunt up a property owner.
There are rattlesnakes, so keep that in mind.
Some more.
You're really selling it,
These airstrips is,
Keep your canopy closed.
in my recollection, the only time people have landed at these airstrips has been, what was it, 6 p.m. when you landed there or something like that? These people who went way south and came back north saying, I gotta find that last lift in the Hernandez area where there's usually good lift, and there wasn't any. And so for the typical day, it's, you get high near Pinoch and you explore down that way and it gets better and better as you go. And if for some weird reason it was not working down there, you would turn around, you'd have Pinoch and glide while you're exploring down that direction. I mean, from the Hernandez area, to Pinoch is, let's see, it's about 12 nautical miles.
But there is a gap you have to go through if you get low, right?
If you get real low, you'd go through this gap in the ridge right here. Turn around.